Welcome to the Compounding Center Connections, where we talk about different health conditions with our partner practitioners. I'm your host, Jay Gill, a compounding pharmacist from the Compounding Center in Leesburg, Virginia. At the Compounding Center, we collaborate with practitioners, create custom medications, and help our patients get better. So in this episode, we have Alex Capano from Ecofiber, the parent company of Ananda Professionals. Alex, thanks for joining us on this episode. And we're going to be talking about hemp oil and its benefits. I do want to say, because of some policies of other social media platforms, I'm not going to call it CBD oil and only say this and only time, just so we don't get taken down this podcast. So I'm going to refer to it as hemp-derived oil. So could you please introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Hi. So I am Alex Capano, Dr. Capano in some circles, but I'm very happy to always go by Alex. I am someone who comes from a pretty varied background in science. So I originally studied neuroscience and chemistry, and then went back to school and became a family nurse practitioner. Worked doing that for several years, and then decided, I needed more upward mobility, and I pursued a doctoral degree, and I wanted to do it on the science of cannabinoids, or substances derived potentially from hemp. And at the time, I think that was like 2012, 2013 that I began. So this was not even on the market yet. I mean, this was really still taboo. We've come a long way in the last decade. But when I finished, that was right when we saw these products become federally legal, and we were able to do a lot more research. So I was really lucky in my timing. So I, had to fight to even be able to study this and sort of create this whole program to have a doctoral degree focused on this. But now I have a lot of opportunity, and I get to do a lot of research with really brilliant academics. So that is my background. I joined Ecofiber and Ananda Professional immediately after that. They actually took me to the farm, let me drive a tractor, put Beyonce on in the background in the tractor, and I was sold. So I started not really seeing patients anymore, and just working with them to develop products and consult with other practitioners like yourself to service, a much greater patient population and make an impact in a different way.
Well, I did not know you were a nurse practitioner.
Yeah.
I just most recently heard you at the longevity conference, and I am lucky to have you, on this episode. So, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, a disclaimer before we get started that any information discussed on this podcast is just for informational purposes only. It's not for diagnosis or treatment. So let's dive right into it. So, Alex, could you talk to us? What is hemp-derived oil, and how does it work?
Okay, I want to ask you, because of the disclaimer you said for different social media platforms, can I use all the words that I typically use?
Go for it. We'll just,
okay, all right, we'll see.
It's just that in the past, every time I put some kind of a promotion on Facebook or something, and all of a sudden it will be taken down just because I used the incorrect language.
Okay,
And
but probably not for the recording, just maybe your copy.
It could be that. Let's just go with it.
We'll see. Okay.
Yeah.
So hemp oil, and I actually call it hemp extract, because hemp oil can be derived from seeds. So hemp seed oil, for example, is great for you, but very different. Hemp extract, or hemp oil, if we don't say hemp seed oil, is actually derived from the flowers. And that is the only part of the plant that is going to have those active cannabinoids in it. Hemp extract is primarily rich in cannabidiol, or CBD, but it has many other cannabinoids in it, terpenes, flavonoids, and those are the compounds that have really, really vast therapeutic potential, and really excellent safety profile. So yeah, it's derived from the flower of a hemp plant and is very different than hemp seed oil. So different parts of the plant service different end products, I would say. So make sure it's actually, flower derived if you're looking for therapeutic purposes.
Gotcha. And then how does that differ with what we hear THC,
So to be a hemp plant, you actually to be considered legally a hemp plant, it's actually a legal definition. You have to have 0.3% THC or less by dried weight. So that's a very, very small amount of THC and not enough for it to be intoxicating or psychoactive. So I typically veer away from saying CBD isn't psychoactive because it does act as an anxiolytic. And to me, that's psychoactive if it's going to, potentially reduce or improve anxiety, but it will not intoxicate. So this is something you're not going to have euphoria. There's no munchies. There's no disorientation. There's no intoxication potential whatsoever with CBD itself. And that really, really low amount of THC just isn't going to be enough to intoxicate. So this is something where you get the benefits, but without the high.
Gotcha. Cool. Now, how about could you talk to us in general what you have seen the benefits of the CBD oil and just general benefits of what you've used in your practice or what you've come across being used for?
Well, the top three reasons that people use CBD are pain, sleep, and mood, and primarily
Yeah.
anxiety versus, a depressive issue. It's maybe helpful in some cases for that if people have associated anxiety with depression, but really it's anxiety. So pain, sleep, and mood are the top three. They have been for years and they continue to be. And I think because that's really where they're effective, but also where we sort of all suffer, right?
Yeah.
I think most of us have troubles with pain, sleep, or mood, and often they are interconnected, right? We're not sleeping well, we don't feel well, and then we're in pain, or we're in pain, so we're not sleeping well. And then beyond that, it does feel a little bit like snake oil until you understand it well, because there are so many therapeutic targets that are appropriate. Of course, it's not going to work for everyone. It's not going to work for everything. But I really, really love the stories. And there's really excellent evidence to support the use for spasticity and rigidity with certain neurodegenerative diseases. So, for example, actually a colleague of mine, a family friend, had Parkinson's, and one fist was, closed completely. And then his other hand, the same thing happened. So he really wasn't able to use his hands and therefore perform activities of daily living. I mean, he couldn't dress himself, feed himself, bathe himself. And so he had to go to assisted living, which was really hard for everyone and not what he wanted. But he started using Ananda Professional, the tincture, and he actually was able to regain the ability to open his hand and use his hand and then the other hand as well. And was able to go home again. So there's a lot of stories like that to me are so meaningful. It's not just that it helped with the spasticity and rigidity, but it actually got him back with his family where he wanted to be. So I think that other than pain, sleep, and mood, that neurodegenerative or any spasticity related disorder, we see a lot of use there and success stories.
As a pharmacist at the pharmacy, I really like having this tool, and that is probably the three big conditions that we recommend the CBD oil for is pain, sleep, and mood. But you also touched upon this patient with Parkinson's, and I have to share this little meaningful story too. Well, full disclosure, we carry Ananda Professionals CBD oil at the pharmacy. I've always carried it for close to 5 years just because we like the quality. The the testing that's reported, and our patients tend to do well on it. And prior to being knowledgeable about CBD oil, we carried it at the pharmacy, and I had a patient walk up who had been using CBD oil from Colorado for his Parkinson's tremors. And I always say my patients teach me more than what I kind of learned myself. And that was a meaningful story for me because he spent some time and talked to me that how long he had been using CBD oil for his tremors, and was lucky that he could find a reputable source locally here. So very similar, meaningful story like you had just mentioned. Um, I mentioned quality. Could you talk to us a little bit about what are your quality standards at Ananda Professionals, and to ensure, making sure there's less than 0.3% THC, and making sure all the cannabinoids and the flavonoids and the terpenes are still part of the full spectrum product.
So we're very careful with our farming and agronomy to make sure that our plants are within the legal limit to be considered hemp and don't have any more THC in it. But we're backed up. So the Department of Agriculture actually comes out and tests our fields. And if it were to, the term in the industry is go hot and have higher THC in it, then they'd actually make you burn the field down. So obviously we don't want that from a business perspective, but we don't want that, in our end products, and we test them over 30 times from when they are in the field, and these are grown outside, and without, pesticides, chemicals, anything like that. So they are grown organically. And then from the field to the bottle, there's over 30 quality control checks, both internally, when it first comes into our facility, and then also externally, third parties. So we don't only rely on ourselves. And that's really important because you need someone objective who doesn't have skin in your game, right? Who's going to say, hey, we're going to flag this, instead of maybe letting it go. And then the second part is you have to find the right lab to do that. So testing for cannabinoids in laboratories and pesticides associated or contaminants associated is still relatively new. So you do have these labs that, you can sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and they'll give you a clean bill of health that is not accurate. So you have to make sure that those labs are ISO certified in exactly what you're testing. And we work with labs that are FDA approved. They actually are what the FDA goes for different food products. So these are the best of the best laboratories that, do third-party testing on our products after we've already tested them in-house. And that's really important because while this is legal, it's not regulated yet. So there's no regulation of what you have to do, what exactly can be in the bottle. And there's been some studies where people take these commercially available products and test them in legitimate labs and find contaminants, residual solvents. I mean, you have to get the extract out of the plant. It's often, used with ethanol. And, people are trying to take something to make them feel better, but unfortunately, they're actually ingesting something that can be harmful to them because there's not great quality control. So we really pride ourselves on that, and have been working with Washington to actually say, hey, can you regulate? Which I think is a rare occurrence where industry is actually asking for regulation, but we want the industry to just overall have higher standards. We've sort of set the bar.
That's a great point you made, because it's such a great tool to have, and I know we get consistent results with the Ananda Professional line, but at the same time, I always my opinion is it should be dispensed under the counseling of a pharmacist or a health professional. I think it should be regulated. That you can't. I mean, it's such a great tool that you can't just go buy it at a vape shop or a gas station.
Mhm.
So I wish we get to that point to that level at some point. One of the things I wanted to kind of back up and have you talk to us about. Could you tell us what does full spectrum mean and what is THC free when you see that labeling on the package?
Yes. So you asked about our manufacturing, and I talked about all our quality control checks. But what's really exciting is that our manufacturing process is now patented. And we use mass spec and a number of different technologies to make sure that our product is consistent over and over. And that's why we've actually been able to use our products in FDA authorized clinical trials, specifically with even vulnerable patient populations, for example, those with different types of cancers. Because if you get a bottle 1 month and it works for you, you want to make sure that the same thing is there the next month. So we're able to keep very, very consistent products despite it being botanically derived. And one of the really important things is some people can't have any THC in their products. So broad spectrum, when you said it earlier, or THC free, that means you still have CBD, you have terpenes, flavonoids, the other cannabinoids, but you have absolutely no detectable THC in the product. Now, that's important for someone who maybe is subject to random drug tests for work. I used to be in the hospital. And maybe somebody who is subjected or has the issue with drug tests for whatever reason, whether they're in rehabilitation, they're a DOT worker, maybe they are in the fire department, they can't have any THC. So even though full spectrum, and that does have the THC in it, isn't going to be a high enough level to intoxicate, it still could make someone fail a drug test. So that's why we have THC-free products. And it's important to note that there's not only CBD in the THC-free products, you still have that broad array of other compounds that improve the overall outcome, and you're able to achieve that at a lower dose. The term for that is called the entourage effect, which I always thought was kind of funny, but it's very evidence-based now, and more studies are coming out to support it. And then when we say full spectrum, it's the same thing as broad spectrum, but we didn't remove the THC. So you still have a little bit in there. That's important because THC is a major contributor to that entourage effect I mentioned. We do see in many cases, not all, that people respond a little bit better to full spectrum than broad spectrum. But it's that risk benefit analysis. For some folks, that little amount of THC is not going to intoxicate anyone, but it could pop up on a drug test. So that's when THC free is really important. And it goes back again to that quality control, because there have been cases of products labeled THC free, and people unknowingly consumed THC in them, and it really risked their livelihood.
Yeah. Well, thanks for clarifying that. Now, you touched upon clinical studies, and so tell me, can you speak to us of any future developments or advancements happening in the CBD industry that you're particularly involved in or excited about?
Yes. So we have multiple phase 2 and a phase 3 clinical trial looking at everything from chemotherapy induced peripheral neuropathy, agitation in dementia patients, alcohol and opioid use disorder. But what I'm most excited about right now is work I'm doing with the University of Newcastle in Australia on head and neck cancers and gynecological cancers and endometriosis. So it started as this small study, and that was really my practice area when I was in the clinic. And the results were so compelling that we've expanded the product or the project for 5 years, and gotten more funding, and we've actually filed 5 patents with at least 4 more that are provisionally filed right now. And we're seeing we still have a lot of work to do to get it to the end of the road.
Yeah.
But we're seeing the response not just in symptoms with these issues, but actually in eliminating the endometriosis lesions or the tumors. We have seen
Wow.
an eradication of metastases in some patients. So we are really excited, and it felt like, this is that, once in a
Yeah.
lifetime where we can discover something that is really impactful, really non-toxic compared to chemo. And we've actually began pairing it with chemotherapy and found that one, the overall response is better, but you're able to use 1/6 of the dose that people typically use. So it's so much more tolerable just by adding a little bit of the extract to it.
Wow.
You actually get a better response. So it does work on its own in these conditions that we've seen so far. It's been about 2 years that we've been studying this, but it also offers an adjunct to chemo that allows for 1/6 of the dose and a more effective response overall. So that to me is huge.
Yeah, that is huge. When do you think the results of the study, or when is this going to be completed and released?
I mean, we were a little tight-lipped about the results because of IP purposes. We wanted to
Yeah.
patent it because
Yeah.
without a patent, we really can't be
Yeah.
attractive to bring
Yeah.
to market and actually get it to patients. But now that they're filed, we can talk about it. So
Wow, that's good news.
a lot of the results are out there,
Okay.
and the team is actually working on more scientific papers to be published. We're speaking at conferences about it. So they're they're ongoing. There will be more and more data coming out, but we have a lot that is available now for you.
Awesome. Awesome. So I know you touched upon a patient with Parkinson's. Any other success stories you think you share with us for our listeners out there?
Oh, yes. So there was, I always recommend broad spectrum or THC free in younger patients. But there was a young boy with autism spectrum disorder, often associated, with a lot of anxiety. He was nonverbal, could certainly understand and what someone else was communicating, but never spoke. And he started using this, and not only started talking, and it blew his family away. He was 9 years old,
Oh, wow.
and started hugging his mom. He'd never allowed a hug. And I'm a mom. I have 2 little girls, and if they were, unable to hug me, I think that would be really, really hard. And for her, not only did he begin speaking and just feeling better, and she noticed this decrease in anxiety, which I think we forget about is a component of ASD. But he hugged her. He hugs her now, and like that, I almost tear up when I think about it, because I know that must have felt really, really great for her, and he obviously feels better.
Yeah, that's the when I hear that, that's the reason. I mean, it's a great tool to have. It works so well, and you know, I just wish patients would go to a reputable place to get this and see its benefits.
You know,
If I can
it's
make that one point in this podcast, is not all of it is the same. It's
No,
not.
you're absolutely right. And it's not only about quality control, which is certainly important, but it's also about how to use it. I mean, we talk about the safety profile being excellent, and it is, but I'm talking about the therapeutic potential, or what product you should use for someone who's younger because of frontal lobe issues. that it's not a biologically inert compound. You can't have something that has all of these potential benefits and think that, it's not metabolized through the liver and through the same pathway as a lot of commonly used medications, that you have to get the dose right. So it does require counseling, recommendations, and, a practitioner who is licensed and trained in this, to be able to use it effectively, not only for the vetting, to do all the, painstaking vetting of quality control and deciding what to carry, but also telling someone how to use it and what to use it for. It's, it's a healthcare product.
So what advice do you think, do you have for someone who's considering, maybe listening to this podcast, wants to consider to try using this for themselves for the first time? Any advice whatsoever?
One, I would reiterate what I just said is go to a pharmacy, get it from a professional, get some advice. And two would be start low, go slow. So we see that it's not necessarily more effective at higher doses. For some people, you have to really find what dose works for you. And therefore, be a little patient. We have the stories that are phenomenal where someone's using this for a tremor and it works in 10 minutes and you see the result. But that's sort of the exceptional story, right? For most of us, it's, start using it every day, be consistent, find that dose, get the advice, and you'll see those changes, but you have to give it time. It's not something that 5 minutes later, your entire life changes. So to, be patient and optimistic. Sometimes I skip, my CBD for a couple days. And I forget the things that it helps me with, like my hip pain comes back. And I'm like, oh, what is going on? Oh, and you almost forget what it's helping with. So, get professional advice, start low, go slow, and have some patience.
Well, thank you for sharing that advice. And Alex, thank you very much for joining us today. A lot of good information you've shared with us.
Thank you.
I'll make sure to put the website and some information that you have, great information on the Ananda Professionals website. So I'll make sure to put that in the show notes, the website URL. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Compounding Center Connections podcast. We hope you found the information presented today to be helpful. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to reach out to me at jay@compoundingcenter.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast channel, The Compounding Center Connections, and stay tuned for future episodes. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you for having me, Jay.